the examination can be limited to what you would be intending to elicit on direct that is not already contained in reports provided to defense, and as well what the witness did to formulate an opinion, what the witness relied on by way of documents to form an opinion, what the witness has considered in formulating the opinion, the basis of the opinion, and any opinion, again, to the extent it is not already in a report. So you can do that sort of partial direct examination, and I will allow some limited cross, which is really to simply to elicit those sort of things.
What I was planning on doing, Your Honor, was sort of skimming through the topic headings of each one.
Sure.
And then I know defense has raised a particular issue. I'll go into that a little bit more in depth.
Thank you.
Right this way, please. Follow me then. Face the magistrate and raise your right hand, please.
Ma'am, do you solemnly swear the testimony I'm about to give to this court will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Have a seat, please.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Could you please state your name for the record?
Dorothy Stout?
And that last name is S-T-O-U-T?
Correct.
Ma'am, what is your job?
I'm a forensic analyst for Resolution Video Incorporated.
And from the title of the company, it seems obvious, but that's a video technology analyst?
Forensic video analyst, that is correct.
Okay. If you could just sort of very briefly give the court an understanding of your level of experience, the type of experience you've had.
I really don't think it's
Okay.
necessary unless defense has not received a CD.
That's fine, Judge. I'll move on. When was it that you first became a part of this particular case?
I was contacted in January regarding the case, January of 2014.
And with regards to that contact, did you actually come to Massachusetts around that time?
I did.
And what was the purpose for you coming here then?
I was requested to take a look at the digital video recorder and to determine the date time offset as well as some of the video playback issues that they were having.
And with regards to the particular DVR that you say that you looked at, do you know the source of that DVR?
I believe it's a DVR that was seized from the home of Mr. Hernandez.
And with regards to that particular machine, what did you do?
The first thing I did was take a look at the date time offset. And after I was able to look at that, I analyzed the settings for that particular machine and then looked at the playback of the video itself.
When setting the time for a particular machine, what do you need to look at? What's the sort of checklist of the things that you need to look at to get the end result of a particular time?
For the date time offset of the digital video recorder?
Yes.
The first thing we take a look at when the machine is powered on is the date time display that's on the actual monitor. And then we go through the menu and the different settings, the software settings, to see how it's actually set up in the software for the date and time information.
Was this particular DVR sort of an unusual DVR?
It was. The difference between this DVR and ones that I've seen before is that it's a hybrid system, meaning that it handles both analog cameras as well as digital IP cameras.
With particular attention to the date time offset, what is important about that analog versus digital dichotomy?
The analog cameras, because they're sending voltage information and the digital video recorder is turning that information into data, the date time offset is created by the digital video recorder for the analog cameras. The digital IP cameras, though, they're like their own mini computer, and they have their own date time information inside those particular digital cameras. That date time information is actually overlaid in the picture area of the digital cameras, and that information is sent down to the digital video recorder and incorporated as part of the picture information.
All right, so let's start with the analog cameras. With regards to the analog cameras, does the DVR itself set a time for the display images for the analog cameras?
That is correct.
Okay, so with regards to those cameras, what do you need to do in terms of, to say, the time on the screen, how far is it offset from the real world?
For the
analogs.
analog, right, for the analog cameras, we take a look at the date time setting of the digital video recorder itself, and from that we can use it to calculate the offset.
And with regards to the digital cameras, what's the extra step or steps?
With the digital cameras, we actually have to take a look at the digital camera settings themselves and see what their set date time is, so we can calculate those, each individual date time offsets per camera.
Now, with regards to those per camera offsets for the digital cameras, did you actually have an opportunity to review those?
I did.
When was that?
Following my initial analysis of the digital video recorder, I went to the home of Mr. Hernandez and was allowed to access each of those cameras, the digital cameras, and take a look at their date and time setting and calculate the offset from there.
Okay, how did you do that?
I took a laptop computer and connected it into their network system. I knew the IP addresses of the different cameras because they were actually listed inside the digital video recorder. And using a web browser, I was able to access each camera by their internet protocol address and pull up their menu information.
All right, I need to slow that down a little bit. Okay, so first of all, in that context, what's an IP address?
An IP address is a unique address for a device on a network. If you think about it in terms of a telephone number, everybody has a unique telephone number, and it's how you communicate with devices over networks.
And then, so with regards to this particular DVR, was it on a network?
It was on a network.
And so was it only the digital cameras, if you will, that were on the network, or all the cameras on the network through the DVR itself?
Through the DVR itself, only the digital cameras were on the network.
Okay. And when you went to the defendant's home to look at the digital cameras, was the DVR there that day?
No, it was not.
So where in the home did you go?
Went into the basement area behind the home theater. That's where the actual switch was located, where all the digital cameras were connected to. And that's the switch that I connected my laptop camera to access those digital cameras.
Okay. What did you use to plug into your laptop?
A network cable, just a plain network patch cable.
Did you ever have an opportunity to look at the cameras themselves, to sort of go up and look at them?
I did not actually physically access the cameras themselves throughout the home. The only cameras that I saw are the ones that I saw as I was walking through the home.
With regards to the actual content of the DVR itself, did you make note of sort of visual problems with it, or stuttering or anything like that?
I noticed that the playback of the video, there were anomalies where we had some camera views play information that appeared to have already occurred in the video itself. For example, there were two camera views, one of the living room area and one of the front door. You would see somebody standing at the front door, but they would also be in the living room, leaving the living room area and walking towards that particular camera view. So that was one anomaly that I noticed during playback. The other was that there were frames that appeared to have been dropped. It was skipping during playback.
So you've described two different anomalies. Are they sourced to the same problem, or are they two separate problems?
They are sourced to the same problem.
And do you have an opinion with regards to the cause of that?
Yes, I would call that image latency.
And what caused it?
Image latency occurs, and it's a known problem with digital cameras, digital IP cameras for a digital video recorder, in that the camera is responsible for converting the visual information into data. And as it's traveling from the camera over the network to the switch to the digital video recorder to then be stored, there is a delay that occurs, and there's a lot of processing that has to be done. And during that processing, if there's a lot of devices on the network, there's congestion, and things can get missed and dropped, as well as a delay in storage.
Is there any way to recover that information?
No, if it's not stored on the digital video recorder, it's not there at all.
Now, with regards to the process by which you get the The material that's on the hard drive, is that stored in an open or proprietary format?
The information that's actually stored on the hard drive in the digital video recorder is stored in a proprietary format.
And what does that mean?
That means that the hard drive itself, if you were to remove it from the digital video recorder and connect it to another computer, say a standard computer that we would all use in our businesses or homes, it doesn't understand the file system. It doesn't understand the data that's there. The only thing that can really read the data and make sense of that data is the digital video recorder itself.
So if you wanted to play the material, the actual images that are on the DVR there, how would you have to do that if you wanted to get them onto a regular computer?
If you wanted to get them on a regular computer, you would actually use the functions of the digital video recorder itself, the software functions, to provide a copy of that video information. And usually this is done through an export process or a backup function. And in this digital video recorder, it had an export process where you could actually export the video and burn it to a CD or a DVD. You could export it to an external USB drive or eSATA drive. And that process would give you, again, proprietary files, but it also gives you a player program that you can then use on your own computer to play those videos back.
Okay, so it'll create a CD, but still in the proprietary format?
Correct.
The player can run in a computer.
That is correct.
All right. So how do you get it from within the proprietary player to a more standardized format?
To get it to a more standardized format, there's actually two processes that you can use. One is called a screen capture process. And with this, we have forensic tools on the forensic video analysis side that allow us to play back the video in the proprietary player. And then the screen capture tool actually takes multiple pictures of that playback per second and stores it in a standard file format that anybody could play back on their computers. So that's one method of creating a standard format that everybody could access, which is screen capture. The other method is a process called transcoding. And transcoding is a process where you convert something from one format to another. And we have tools that allow us to access the video information and then rewrap it in something that we can actually access it on another computer. And that's a process of transcoding.
In terms of actual image loss, do either of those two processes that you've just described create any loss of any image quality?
If you're using the tools properly, you should not have any loss in image quality.
And then what's the final product? What's the benefit of having the final product of those two, either of those two processes?
Once you have the final product, you're allowed to do additional clarifications to the images, to the video. You're allowed to create a timeline sequence that shows multiple camera views playing back at the same time. In that standard format, we have tools that allow us to access the video and then do the clarification techniques that we need to do.
Okay. You use the word allow. But what do you mean by allow? Is that sort of a software word that you're using here?
Yes, I would say it is a software word in that if it's a proprietary video file, we can't access those files in our forensic tools. If it's a standard file, we now can access those files with our tools.
With regards to the time date offset, did you do a time date offset analysis for each of the cameras that were contained in the information in the DVR?
For the digital cameras, yes, I did a time date offset calculation for those, and then the analog cameras time date offset was based on the digital video recorder.
And that would be the same for all of those cameras?
That is correct.
Just have a second, Judge. Oh, I have a question. With regards to a DVR in particular, or actually with regards to this particular DVR, if you continue to run the DVR, even though it had no cameras in it, would that cause a problem?
It can cause a problem. In this particular DVR, it is possible to have no cameras connected to it, but it would still think it's in a record function. And when a hard drive is full, most DVRs are set up to record in a circular fashion, which means essentially when it's full, it starts recording over the earliest recorded date. And with no cameras connected to it, this particular DVR is under the impression that it can still record information.
So what happens when it continues to record, but it has no camera?
You get black screens. There's date information for it, but the screen is black instead of having any visual information to it.
So how do you set it so it doesn't do that?
There is a setting in the menu settings under the software of the DVR to actually turn all the cameras off from recording.
I think those are the subject areas that I would go into, Judge.
Again, this is not cross-examination, but if there are areas you want to elicit that, in terms of what was relied on, you may.
Good afternoon, Sal.
Good afternoon.
So you begin work in January of 2014,
Correct.
and some of the email correspondence that's been given to us indicates that before coming to Massachusetts, you had requested the name of the DVR so that you could do some preparation before traveling here.
That is correct.
And did you receive the name
I
of the DVR?
believe I did because I downloaded a manual for it.
Okay. And what did you do with the manual?
I looked through it to get a feel for what the software interface would look like, default usernames and passwords, some of the system settings that I might be interested in taking a look at. That was my main purpose of reviewing the manual.
And had you received any written documentation before you got the name of the DVR player?
Before I got the name of the DVR player,
Yeah.
I don't believe I did.
Okay. How was the contact initiated?
I received a contact from Lou Pacheco was my first contact, and then he put me in contact with Jeremiah Donovan.
From the state police?
Correct.
And did you receive any more information than just the name of the DVR player before coming to Boston or Massachusetts?
I don't believe I did.
Okay. And did you start a file once you were hired?
File itself? I started a file actually of my notes when I arrived to do the analysis.
Did you start a file of any sort before you came to Massachusetts?
No, I did not.
All right. Did you prepare a proposal of some sort that you sent to the district attorney's office?
Oh, I believe I probably sent over my fee schedule, maybe a CV. I'm sorry, that's very standard. I forgot about that. So we would send the information about how much it would estimate cost-wise for me to come up and to analyze the DVR.
All right. Do you have a copy of your fee schedule and your estimate of what it would cost?
I do not have that with me, I'm sorry.
Do you have it? Does it exist?
It probably does exist, yes.
Where would it exist?
If I sent it through email, I probably have an email record of it.
And if you didn't send it through email?
Then I would have a file of it in my file folder.
You have a file folder?
Correct.
Where is that?
That is on my server back in my office.
Okay. What's in your file folder on your server in your office?
A copy of the report, probably if there was a proposal, some invoices for the work that I've done up to January, and then case notes and PDFs of the manuals.
Okay. And what manuals do you have PDFs of?
I have manuals for PDFs of not only that digital video recorder, but from the company itself, they had another system, so I think I downloaded that as well. When I arrived, I also downloaded manuals for the cameras, once I found out what the make and model of the cameras were in the home, so I downloaded those manuals as well.
And did you make use of them in your work?
I did. Before we went to the house, I took a look at the information in those PDFs so I could understand how the cameras functioned, get a feel for what kind of menu settings they would have, so I could review the menu settings in an expeditious fashion.
Now, did you do some work at the North Attleboro Police Station before going to the home?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
That location is where I had the initial digital video recorder, and that's where I did my initial analysis of the digital video recorder for the date-time offset, as well as the video playback issues.
And describe for us again what the video playback issue was as you understood it when you came.
As I understood it, the playback issue was the fact that there were people in multiple camera views when based on the playback, they shouldn't have been able to be in those two camera views at the same time. That's the image latency that I was talking about, where you would see somebody at the front door, but they would also be in the living room camera view. So that was what I understood the problem to be. And then, of course, during the playback, I also noticed the drop frame issue, the playback stuttering that occurred on the digital cameras as well.
And so on some of the digital cameras, it appears that the motion is not continuous. Is that a fair way to describe part of that phenomenon?
Correct. It's not fluid.
So that you might have a person in one location in the room, and then there's a second, 2, 3, 4 seconds, and the person appears on the other side of the room?
Correct. It can be very, very slight, where there's just like a little tiny skip. And in some instances, they're in one location, and then there's maybe 2, 3, 4 or more seconds, and then they're in another location.
And you attribute that to the delay in the digital camera processing the information and getting it to the hard drive?
Correct. The digital camera creates the video data, and then it has to travel over the network, and with congestion on the network and getting that information to the DVR in time, some things get dropped, and there's also delay in the storage of it.
And is that just a random phenomenon, or does it occur at particular intervals?
It is, I don't know if I would say it's random, but it's not regular either. It's not a consistent phenomenon in that it's not like every 5th frame is dropped or every 10th frame is dropped, or it's consistently lagging by 2 seconds. So there's not necessarily a pattern that I noticed during playback. Probably, I guess, random. Yeah, random may be the best word for it, because it occurs at certain times when it seems like there's no activity, so there shouldn't be, any drop frames, and then at certain other times when it drops frames, there seems to be no pattern to it.
And is there correct me if I'm wrong, but these digital cameras are pretty sophisticated, high-end cameras. Is that a fair characterization?
I would say that's a fair characterization of these particular cameras.
And are there settings on those cameras that could ameliorate this issue, or that could ameliorate the issue, could have ameliorated the issue?
Not to my knowledge. I don't believe there are settings that the camera could have used to make the issue better. I think the issue would have been resolved over the network itself with the switch that was being used. It's a known problem that occurs. IC Real-Time says it's a known problem. Other manufacturers say it's a known problem. When you have digital cameras on a network switch, like in this particular instance, network congestion will cause lag and drop frames. Most of the companies have alleviated that problem in their newer versions of these hybrid DVRs by actually incorporating the network ports in the digital video recorder itself, so they're separate from any other network traffic.
So the problem, you say, is a network switch that has other network traffic on it that might slow down the transmission of the data?
Correct. There might be other network traffic. There's also, of course, 6 digital cameras and the digital IP cameras in this particular installation. So you've got the 6 cameras, and then, of course, there might be other traffic that's going on that's causing a delay.
And when you went to the home, did you see the network switch in question?
I did.
And what was attached to that network switch?
From my recollection, there were, I believe, 4 cameras attached to the switch There was another cable coming out of the switch that I believe used to be attached to the digital video recorder. And then there was a router too that I think had the other two cameras attached to it.
So it wasn't a network switch that held other electronic equipment in the house, fair? It was just devoted to the digital cameras.
From my recollection for that switch, I believe that switch only had the cameras.
And so when you say from your recollection, when you went to the home, did you make any notes?
Of the configuration of the system,
Of any sort?
I made notes of the date-time offset of the digital cameras. That was my main focus for being there.
And what form did your notes take?
I typed them into my laptop computer.
Okay. Now, I've been given yesterday a 2-page typed set of notes. Describe how that 2 pages was created.
As I'm going through and doing my analysis and noting certain things, I type that information into a Word document. It's kind of like a running train of thought of things that I see and note. And then from that, I'll use that information to create my report.
So is it your testimony that the only notes you've taken in this entire assignment beginning in January of 2014 are those 2 pages?
Those 2 pages, correct.
No other notes?
No, the
No
notes.
handwritten notes?
No handwritten notes.
Now, did you watch the video and notice these anomalies?
I did.
And did you make note of where they occurred?
I did not.
So you're not able to sit here today and say, if you look at camera 13 at 1 a.m., there's a 4-second freezing, and then it skips.
That's correct. I am not able to do that.
Okay. And does that, is there any professional organization of video analysts?
There are professional organizations for video analysts.
Are you a member of any?
I'm a member of the International Association for Identification.
And what is that organization?
That organization, it's one of the oldest forensic organizations in the United States. It's for forensic professionals who work in areas such as imaging technologies, video analysis, crime scene, Russian documents, a lot of traditional forensic sciences as well.
So it's not limited to forensic video analysis?
That is correct.
And does that organization certify video analysts?
Yes, it does.
And are you so certified?
I am not.
Have you attempted to become certified?
I have not.
What's the process of becoming certified?
The process to becoming certified through the IAI, or the International Association for Identification, is that you must submit a letter with 2 letters of recommendation requesting to sit to take the test. Your background and experience must be sufficient enough to take the test. Once you've been accepted, you will take a written test, and once passing the written test, you'll be offered a practical test.
And is there a reason you haven't sought?
This is really beyond
All right,
the scope
I'll move on.
of today's hearing.
Are there any protocols that the IAI has promulgated for video analysts?
The IAI has not actually created any protocols or guidelines. They rely on an organization called the Scientific Working Group of Imaging Technologies. They have actually created guidelines for the analysis of video evidence as well as digital video recorders.
And do you have those protocols?
I do.
Could you make them available?
I can.
Okay. And you indicated that the documents, you have a file on your server at home.
Mm-hmm.
Is that accessible to you from afar?
It is.
Okay. And I was given a DVD at the lunch break, and I want to ask you some questions about that.
Sure.
Let's see. So, forgive me if I don't give you the exact titles, but there was a folder that said something like IP details,
Yes.
and within that folder, there appeared to be 6 subfolders that had 40 or 45 photographs in each of those 6 folders.
Yes.
And what is that?
That is correct. Those images were actually, I'm sorry, they were taken by me while I was in the home accessing each particular camera through the network system. I used a tool called Snippet, which is part of the Windows operating system, to take screenshots of each of the menus for those particular cameras.
So that there are some, probably 300 or so screenshots in those subfolders?
I believe there was 270 something.
Okay, well, I'm estimating.
Yes.
And those represent what?
Those are screenshots of the menu settings for each digital camera. So the subfolders, 81, 82, and so on, those represent the IP address of each camera. And then inside those folders, the screenshots of the menu settings. So when you initially log onto the camera, you're presented with a menu screen. And I took screenshots of all the menu screens.
Okay. And that's in your folder.
Yes, that is correct.
And what information out of those screenshots did you use in your analysis in this case?
I didn't use any of the information for my analysis. The date, time information was there. My main purpose of taking the screenshots was to collect that information just in case I needed it to try and explain further the image latency that we were seeing in the video.
And there also appear to be about a dozen photographs within that IP details folder.
Correct.
What are those?
Those were provided to me by Mr. Donovan. He collected those from the installer, and they had, I believe, the username and passwords for all the different cameras.
So Trooper Donovan gave you these dozen photographs.
Correct.
And he had gotten those from Mr. Connors.
I don't know the gentleman's name.
Let me just see if I've got those. Excuse me one moment, Your Honor. So are these the 10 pictures that you got from Trooper Donovan?
Let's see. I believe so.
If you want, I can share my laptop with you so you can look at the disc I was given.
Yes, these are the pictures I received from Mr. Donovan. And I remember them because they have the username and passwords by IP address for each of the cameras in this particular setup.
So there are 11 cameras at the house, is that right?
Yes, 5 analog cameras and 6 digital cameras.
And there are only 10 pictures.
Okay, yes.
You know if
Let's
I'm
see.
missing a picture or if
Let's
Trooper
see.
Donovan's holding back on us?
86, 85, 84, 83, 82, and 81. So these 6 right here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. These 6 images here are the 6 digital cameras that are there. And then these images here, yard, driveway, pool, and playroom. These other 4, I don't know anything about. Oh, you know what? These 4 here based on the video source camera name, backyard, driveway. They were analog cameras that were split into a separate network device that, as was explained to me, allowed access to those cameras through kind of a whole house like intercom system. They could stand in the kitchen and look at different camera views. So these look like the analog cameras that were actually, the signal was split away from the DVR and put into that particular network device that allowed them to access it through the panel.
So, I'll come back to that in
Okay.
a moment, but you've got 10 photographs there that I don't think I've seen before. Mr. Griffin, do you know if we've been given those in discovery?
I don't know, I have never seen them before, I can say that, they're not in the main file for this witness, Judge, so I hadn't seen them, but,
We're looking into it.
yeah,
Okay.
I can find
Could
them.
we check with Trooper Donovan and see? When did you receive those?
I received them, I believe, when I was at the police station analyzing the DVR.
In January of 2014.
Correct.
Did you understand that there's a discovery order in this case requiring you to furnish the Commonwealth so they can furnish the defendant with everything that you generated?
I received an email that there was a discovery order, and unfortunately, the only thing I think I provided at that time was my report, and I did not understand that I needed to provide everything else.
Do you have that email?
I can look for it. Yes, I probably do.
Okay. Did you get that for us?
Mm-hmm.
Now, besides these 10 photographs, did you get anything else from Trooper Donovan?
No, I mean, I've seen pictures. I saw pictures of the installation behind the home theater, which I actually witnessed when I arrived at the scene, but I saw the pictures that were taken, I believe, by the crime scene person of the digital video recorder before it was removed.
And there was no digital recorder there when you were there in January of 2014, correct?
Correct.
Now, I thought you said that you had not examined the cameras. On direct
Physically?
examination? Yeah.
Physically examine the cameras?
Yeah.
No, I was in the home. I saw the cameras on the front porch. I saw the camera in the foyer and the one in the basement.
Well, did you see a trooper going around at your direction and opening the cameras up?
Yes.
And photographs were taken while that was being done?
On the front porch, I wasn't on the front porch. I was inside the house at the time. There was a photographer there, correct.
Taking photographs as the trooper was
Dismantling the camera.
dismantling the cameras.
Correct.
And how many cameras were dismantled?
I believe the two on the front porch and the one in the basement. I can't remember if we looked at the one in the foyer.
And what was the purpose in looking at the cameras?
The cameras themselves had the ability to have a secure digital flash memory card installed in them, an SD card. And what the SD card allows those cameras to do is to store video information in the near term on the SD card. And so if the network is busy, it can store the information locally for a set period of time before it tries to transmit it to the digital video recorder. So we were looking to see if those cameras actually had the SD cards installed in them.
And so the purpose would be, the purpose of the SD card inspection doesn't have anything to do with the time offset.
No.
It has to do with whether there is some information stored on the camera that's not made its way to the SD cards in those three cameras?
There were no SD cards.
And was there a reason for not continuing and checking the other cameras?
They were, I know that a couple were not physically accessible with the ladder that we actually had. And the other reason was we determined if 4 of the cameras did not have the SD cards installed, the installer does not recall having put SD cards in the camera, that most likely the other cameras did not have
capture involved?
No, I do not.
Okay. But you were informed by someone that they didn't remember inserting an SD card in the cameras?
Correct. I looked at the manual, saw they were capable, asked if anybody had checked the cameras to see if the SD cards were in the cameras, and was told at that time that nobody checked the cameras. They would look to see if anybody had actually installed SD cards in the cameras, and that's when I was told that they don't recall putting SD cards in the cameras.
And who told you that?
That was Mr. Donovan.
Have you seen any report that documents his work in that respect?
I have not.
Let me grab these back.
Sure.
Now, you said that you had downloaded or looked at the two manuals for the IC real-time DVR.
Correct.
And there's some difference in those two manuals?
I was given a particular model number for the DVR. And when I went to the IC Real-Time website, I couldn't find an exact match for that particular model number. So I downloaded the two manuals that I thought were closest to that particular model number.
And was there some reference in either of those manuals about the problem of image latency?
No, there was not.
Now, I thought you had said a few minutes ago that this is a recognized problem by IC Real-Time and other manufacturers?
Correct.
And what's your basis for saying that?
In my work with digital video recorders and hybrid systems and setting up cameras, two hybrid systems, we have noticed this latency problem before. I have talked to manufacturers about the latency issues and the things that they have tried to done to rectify that situation. And I did talk to IC Real-Time about it, and they said it was a known problem with their systems.
Who did you talk to at IC Real-Time?
I believe it was John Bartel.
And when did you talk to him?
I talked to him in January.
January of 2014.
2014.
And what did you say and what did he say?
I asked him about the latency issue, and I asked him about the skipping, and he said it was most likely due to network congestion.
And did you document that in any fashion?
I did not. It was a phone conversation, and it confirmed what I thought the original problem was anyway.
Is there any protocol that you're aware of for video analysts that suggests that it would be good practice to document conversations?
As a forensic professional, it is a good practice to document conversations. Yes.
It would have been a good practice.
It would have been a good practice.
And is there any scientific literature on this subject?
On image latency,
Yes.
I do not believe there is any scientific literature that I'm afraid of.
That you're
It is
aware of?
correct.
What publications are recognized in your field as being respected or authoritative?
The IAI also has its own publication that comes out, I believe, once a month with documents that are relative. Most of the documentation that we look at is through the scientific working groups.
And does the scientific working group publish information to guide forensic analyses in your field?
Yes, they do.
Are they referred to by any particular name or number?
We checked it this time, just getting far afield.
The scientific working groups, they have on their website the publications. They're called like Section 1, Section 2, I believe, and so on.
And that's the scientific working group of
Imaging technologies.
imaging technology. And have you, do you try to adhere to their practices?
Yes, I do.
Now, in addition to the IP details folder on this CD that I've been given, there were two manuals from IC Real-Time. Mm-hmm. Yes?
Yes, I believe so.
Did you prepare that disc, or this was done by someone in the district attorney's office?
I provided the files and they burned the disk.
Okay. So is there any difference in those two IC real-time manuals?
I believe there is, but I do not recall what the particular differences are.
And did you note any differences in either of those manuals from the machine that you saw in January of 2014?
I did not.
And did you note what the differences were between those two manuals?
I did not.
Now, and those manuals were both 174 pages long, is that right?
I do not recall.
Will you take my word for it?
I'll take your word for it.
All right. And then you've got a technical specification for a Panasonic camera SF336. Do you recall that?
I do.
And that was a short 2-page document?
I'll take your word for that as well.
Okay. And then there was a 44-page installation manual for that SF336 camera.
Yes.
And then there was a 224-page operating manual for the SF336.
Correct.
And a 244-page operating instructions for an SW395A.
I believe that's a different model number of camera, correct?
I assume so, but
Yes.
I haven't gone through the 1,000 pages that you've given me
Right.
since lunch. So the operating instructions are, is it your belief that those would be for the cameras on the front outside?
Yes. I believe the two cameras outside were different model numbers than the ones that were inside.
And then there's a 40-page guide associated with the SW396.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you have on your server?
I am not aware of anything else that's on my server.
So your entire work is summarized in that 2-page sheet of notes
And my report.
and your report.
Is the fee schedule and the estimate of costs and invoices still on the server?
Yes, it is.
Is-
I'm just going to interject, that was sent a year ago.
Okay, so you have that.
I have a CV, and I've gotten another CV yesterday, I think.
Right. But the fee schedule you have,
Well, I got a proposal that, I didn't know if that's the same.
That's in there. We have it.
January 31st, 2000.
and what's actually been invoiced, you referred to some invoices.
Correct.
Have those been provided?
I can have this. So let me just show you a document and ask you if this is what you meant when you said a fee schedule, the front page.
That's the proposal for work, correct.
So is that the fee schedule that you referred to?
It is not. I have a schedule that says, for particular types of analyses, travel, estimate, that's the fee schedule that I'm referring to.
Okay. Could you provide that to us? All
Yes, I can.
right. And then I've been given something now. Oh, I see. This is... Are these documents that you exchanged with the district attorney's office about some obligations of yours in this case?
Yes. I believe, yes, that is correct, and that is my signature.
And the third page?
Yes, that is my email.
Can I just have one
You
more?
may. So I just want to clarify, have the actual invoices been provided, or does the
How many invoices have you sent?
At least two.
We've received 2.
Okay.
But if there are more, maybe you can check and see if there are more.
Okay.
Excuse me. Your Honor.
You may.
Did you download anything else from the network switch when you were at the house in North Attleboro?
I did not.
So let me just see if I can trace your course of work. You were up here for maybe 4 days in January of 2014,
Yes,
and during that time you worked with what you understood to be the original DVR with a copy of the hard drive in it.
correct.
You understood that you weren't working with an original hard drive.
That's correct.
And you reviewed that at the North Attleboro Police Station.
Correct.
And how much time did you spend then reviewing the DVR?
I was there, I started at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I believe I was there all day. I don't remember what time that I left.
Do you have time records that reflect the work you've done?
Yes, in the invoice.
The invoice is just a one-line invoice. It
The-
says 18 hours, $250 an hour.
Right, so 18 hours. But I don't have the day, how long it
You don't-
was per day.
You don't bill, you don't have a timekeeping system that says, you know, I spent from 9 to 5 today, and then the next day I spent from 8 to 11.
No, I don't use one.
Do you have any, if you send your invoice out later, do you have any way of keeping track of that?
Yes, I look at the days of the work that I've done and how much time I've spent during that particular day.
How do you know how much time you spent on a particular day?
The time I start my day and the time that I end my day.
Well, looking back on it, if a bill covers a year's time, how do you know when you started and stopped?
I guess in some cases, I would write in my Word document, start at this time, ended at that time, but I wouldn't save the information. I would just add it into the invoice itself.
So you would add it to your Word document, your running,
My running tally of the
Yeah.
invoice for that particular month.
and then you would delete it once you submitted an invoice?
Well, at the days for the month, because the invoice is done at that time, I would put in 6 hours on the time, and then the next day, if I worked for 8 hours, I would add 8 to 6 and make that 14, and so on.
Is there anything like that on these 2 pages of notes you gave us?
No, there is not.
So how do you remember what time you've invested in the case to send a bill to the...
It's on, so the invoice document itself, on the hours where you said it said 18.
Yeah.
When I started at 8 o'clock in the morning and got done that day, I would put in 8 hours, let's say, if I was there for 8 hours of
Where
work
would you put it in?
in the actual line item. And then as I went in the next day, the 8 would be there, and then I would add in the number of hours that I worked on the next day, and so on.
The line item of the invoice.
Correct,
So you sort of have an invoice that you
correct.
keep adding to?
So let me just show you your...
Right, so where it says 18 on my,
This is your second invoice. This is
right,
December of 2014,
right.
and that covered, I'll represent to you that your earlier bill was January, late January of 2014? Does that sound right?
That sounds right.
Okay, so explain to us how you came up with 29 hours
For this particular invoice where it says quantity,
Yeah.
when I work a day, I enter the hours into that particular line. And then the next day, when I work a day, I come back and I increase those number of hours for that. And then the next day, and so on and so on. So if I worked 4 hours, let's say, and this was at 29, I would add 4 to 29 to make it 33.
And so if the Commonwealth ever said, well, can you give us the backup for that, you wouldn't be able to?
That's correct.
So, with respect to the image latency, you have an opinion that you're prepared to express to the jury?
Yes, I do.
And what would that opinion be?
The image latency was caused by the digital video recorder's interactions with the digital IP cameras and the network congestion that was caused by the IP cameras to the digital video recorder.
And what's the effect of the image latency?
The effect is that there is a time lag between when something occurs and when it's actually played back on the DVR.
And what's the basis for your opinion?
The basis for the opinion is my own experience with dealing with hybrid systems and digital and analog cameras, in addition to discussions with manufacturers who develop IP and hybrid systems.
So how long was your discussion with the person from IC Realtime?
It was a pretty brief conversation.
You, of course, don't have a time record about how long it was.
I do not have a time
You don't have a
record.
note about its content.
That is correct.
What other manufacturers have you talked to about image latency?
I've discussed it with Access Camera Systems. They actually are one of the leading manufacturers of IP cameras.
And who there have you discussed it with?
I do not have a name to give you.
And when was that discussion?
It's been a couple of years now, I believe.
All right. Anyone else?
No, that's probably my two
Okay.
contacts.
And you said that the hybrid system, that this IC Realtime is a hybrid system,
Correct.
and it has capability of servicing both digital and analog cameras,
Correct.
and that's an unusual setup.
It is not very common to find a hybrid system in a lot of installations.
And have you ever worked on a matter involving a hybrid system?
A matter involving a hybrid system, no, I have not.
Have you ever examined forensically a hybrid system?
Forensically, no, I have not.
Have you had any experience with a hybrid system?
Yes, I've had lots of experience with hybrid systems.
In what respect?
I provide training to law enforcement in various applications, and we have hybrid systems in our training programs.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll see you tomorrow morning.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to address the court.
Court's still in session.
If I may, I
You
would
may.
move to exclude her testimony. She's never seen any scientific literature about image latency problems. She's never worked with an IC real-time device before. She's never handled a forensic matter involving a hybrid system. She's relying on two conversations, which the one with the person from IC Realtime was described as brief. She can't say anything about it other than, yes, this is probably related to image latency, and a conversation with someone at another company a couple of years ago. She can't identify who that was or what the conversation was. She apparently didn't have the correct manual for this machine. She's not a certified analyst, and I think under Daubert and Lanigan, her testimony should be excluded.
My Honor, we really didn't get into her credentials with regards to that. That was sort of at the very tail end here. She has a much wider and more extensive history, but I will say that she did say that she actually teaches classes in which the type of system that's used here is a part of the teaching curriculum. Furthermore, her facility with regards to those questions was quite clear. She had a clear understanding of how it was caused, why it was caused. Merely because a person doesn't have some part of a set of credentials that's out there as a potential doesn't make them not an expert. You know, people grow, I guess, in their careers. But more to the point with regards to the testimony, that's only a small part of what she has to testify to anyway. She has also setting time. She's going to discuss the types of systems, and she's going to discuss how to get something from a system to a usable format with the time sort of corrected on it. So her testimony is much wider than just this image issue. Furthermore, I suggest to you that what's going to happen is the defense is going to say, ha-ha, you can't have your expert testify, and then they're going to criticize our image latency. She should at least be allowed to explain that that is the scientifically accepted reason why that sort of part of the image
I guess the question is, and I'll let you consider what her testimony was and give me something in the morning, but the question that was raised is whether the image latency is what is the scientific basis. At the end, she was asked that she has an opinion of what caused the image latency, and the basis was her own experience in dealing with hybrid systems in her discussions with the two manufacturers. So if you could consider whether that is in fact a sufficient basis to provide the opinion she's provided, what is the scientific basis, and I will hear you on it in the morning.
I guess the other request I would have, Your Honor, is, I spent 30 minutes at lunch looking at this disc. It's a huge volume of material. It's 270, as she said, 276 pictures that she's had since January of 2014. There's
I will hear you tomorrow morning as to whether you have been able to review those. And if there is an issue with that, then I may or may not. I'll hear you on what you're requesting, and she may or may not have to come back at some other time. This case is expected, the jury was told this is 6 to 10 weeks. If she has to go back to California for something on Monday, she may have to come back. I don't know how long it will take you to get through the disc that you were provided only today, and the bases for her opinion that came out today. So I will hear you. I don't think you can tell now how long it will take. I will hear it on the morning with respect to that as well. Thank you.
But all right.
So there should be enough witnesses tomorrow in the